you've got sons, is that right?
I've got 5 sons. Yeah.
Oh, I knew you had a couple, but yeah, okay, cool.
Yep. And 4 daughters. So I've got a whole
What?
baseball team.
You've got
Yeah.
9 children?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my golly gosh, wow.
Yeah. So we had to 8 teenagers at once. I wasn't thinking about that when because 5. So we deliberately put them close in age, so they would bond and all of that. And yeah, but then we ended up with 8 teenagers. So that was a little dramatic, but
My gosh. I hope you got a
the
big
youngest,
backyard.
yeah, the youngest two are 16 now.
So I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to talk more about males and the whole masculinity thing and this sort of attack on malehood, on masculinity, whatever you want to call it. And obviously we see it at the moment in the media going berserk, among other
Yeah.
things.
I mean, I try to not look at any of that, but yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah, it's best not to. Yeah, I just see the memes.
Right, right.
But this is the thing. We've now ended up with this generation of males, men, young men that are coming up, and especially at this point in time, and yeah, I mean, basically they're being attacked and they're being programmed as well, in my opinion, to be masculinity is being demonized. Basically, it's bad to be a man. You shouldn't stand up for yourself. Rah 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 rah. If you do, you're just oppressing everyone else and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, honestly, I think it's right now we're seeing, obviously this militant feminism and, the attack on the males is the more obvious thing. But I think honestly, both are under attack. I mean, from the very get-go of, this version of reality, they got rid of any notion of a divine feminine or anything like that, and women were oppressed and, property and all of things like that. And so now I think it's just, they're trying to oppress everybody and get everybody confused and lost and divided and hating each other. And and because everybody's both, we're both masculine and feminine. And all the creation stories kind of imply that, because masculine and feminine would both need to be present in the divinity. And so whether they were both, like say with Adam was originally, he would have had to been both, and then Eve was taken out of him and they split the two parts, but if we're made in, whatever the divine whole is image, then we contain it all. It's just, us being separate now, there's, more on one side of this and more on the other side of that. And we just need to, that's why we want to come back together, is to alchemically, make them one again. And, but we just have no clue how to do it because they've taken all that knowledge away from us,
Yeah. I mean,
and they used to teach about it, but even in organizations we love to pick on, they had, like the Catholic Church had, I've got a book, actually I've got it in my stack here, The Young Man's Guide from 1910. Wow. Yeah, and it's a big old thick thing about how to be a man, and it's really balanced and talks about, there's all sorts of obviously prayers for different things, which is just a form of manifestation, so if,
yep,
depending on where you're coming from, it still works, and but it talks about self-control and leadership and virtue and all the things. But that's all been swept away now. I mean, you can't find anybody teaching that anymore. And
no, I mean that would actually be good information to read or make some videos of, because
it's a beautiful book. That's why I hung on to it. I was Catholic for 20 years, and I'm not anymore. But I that was one of the reasons I was on the very traditional end of Catholicism, because all that stuff was still there and has so much value, and you can't find it anywhere else,
Yeah. It's like, it reminds me of like the Boy Scouts movement, and that used to be a big thing, and they used to teach boys, take them out in the bush, teach them to be men, and that just got destroyed by, I mean,
It,
really, it was by the, the P people, wasn't it? Everyone got too scared to let their kids go, basically.
yeah, yeah. We were big into that at the beginning, and but it was very apparent to me right away,
Infiltration.
what was going on there, and then you just have to leave it.
You
It's
do,
like
yeah.
maybe it was once, but it's whatever it was. It's not that now.
No.
Everything's been integrated.
But this is what they go for. Anything that takes us back to who we are, that
Right.
they can't allow that. It's
Right.
and this is the thing about the splitting as well, is if we don't know how to be a man or a woman, or how to, be in those whatever, female energies or masculine energies, then how can we come back together and make a
Right.
proper union that works? This is the problem. We have all these people that don't quite connect, and we see this everywhere in relationships. People, they're just not connecting. It's like two different energy vibrations that can't, meld.
Right.
They
They
keep
want to,
banging
and they
off each
try,
other. Yeah.
and they just can't do it. Yeah, and I think there's so many reasons for that. I mean, you've mentioned, and everybody probably knows about all the practical physical things, that they're poisoning us with, so that we can't think straight, and that our hormones are all a mess, and those type of things. But then, and then the Hollywood thing, where just for all the way from the very beginning, it's everybody says, oh, movies these days. No, movies all days. I mean, Hollywood was basically set up to do that.
Well, it's wand, Hollywood, the wood from the holly tree. That's what they used to make
Right.
magic wands from. Yeah.
Right. Right. And even like I was watching months ago when everybody was talking about, the World's Fairs, and I watched Meet Me in St. Louis. And, that was in the 40s. And it was so interesting. Yeah, even in that movie, the women are all, oh, don't tell dad, and, even back then they were setting up dad to be the dum dum, and the women were running the show. And it was, the same thing as we see now, but they've just, ratcheted up quite a
Yeah,
bit.
it's like that Steve Jobs quote, you can't see the path going forward, you can only see it looking back. And when you
Mhm.
look back, you can see how they've just, from the 50s, they've just been taking us off course. I mean, I grew up
Mhm.
in the 80s, and in the 80s, male role models as far as the mainstream, it was basically Rambo and
Rambo.
Arnie, go to the army and kill people, and then you're a man. That was it.
Right.
Go and kill
Right.
people.
And
Like,
that's not it at all.
no, like,
But
I mean, people who go to war are not strong because they're just following orders. How's that being a
right.
man? How's that standing up for what you believe in and being ethical? It's just, it's not. But
Right.
they try and build this big persona of that's what a man is. You have to go and fight for your country and fight. If you don't, you're not a man. And what happened in the 60s, if people didn't go, society turned on them, and, oh, how dare you not go and kill people you don't know. I mean, and this is what they do, is that, so they've totally changed what people perceive, strong masculine energy as being. Instead of being the protector, it's now,
Right.
instead of standing still and protecting what's around you, it's now going somewhere else and killing people because someone told
Now,
you that at some point they may come back to you, to where you are. It's
right. Now he's an aggressor and not a protector. And
yeah,
um, and so that filters right into, relationships just between couples, because there's that such fear there. I think deep down, everybody, both men and women, even if they don't know it, really want the traditional roles,
I agree. Yeah,
and they don't know it because they've been conditioned not to. And it's not until sometimes something will happen in their life where something, they'll end up in a doing something traditional, and they'll feel it, and they'll go, oh, well, this just feels right. I had a friend, who, not a close friend, but I heard her tell the story where she was a cattle futures trader. So she was in a very masculine, male dominated occupation. She was single, didn't think she needed a man, just kind of doing her own thing. And she ended up with this male roommate. And she started, little by little, she said, I found myself like doing his dishes or seeing if he wanted a sandwich. And I really liked it. It just made her happy. She's like, it just made me happy. I wasn't romantically interested in him. It just, made me fulfilled. He thought it was weird, but.
But that is feminine energy, isn't it? Like feminine energy is, creative and nurturing. That's what it.
Right.
That's why. So when females do that, they're in sync, or they're in their energy, or whatever in flow. So it feels good. And I think same with males. When they feel they're properly providing, and they're looking after whatever you want to call it, the family or the roost, and they're doing their job there, and then they can also be that sort of support structure as well. I think that's what empowers men. But of course, all these men are running around trying to prove they're the biggest and the toughest and all this kind of stuff. And women also, are programmed. Obviously the men are, but we're all programmed. But the women, and then they think that's what they want, because it's all over that's what Hollywood gives you, and that's what the media gives you. Come on, girls, you want the alpha male, the dude in the gym, and and then they get with these guys, and doesn't normally work out the way they want it to, or the way they perceive it would.
Right. And then you throw the whole, birth control issue into that. And that I don't remember if I told you this, but there are studies done where, a woman will be on birth control and she'll be attracted to a certain kind of man, and they'll get together and they'll start having a relationship. And then if they decide to try to have a baby and she goes off the birth control, well, she's not attracted to him
anymore. Really?
Yeah, it changes. Yeah, it changes the energy.
Yeah.
And
because when she's on it, she's going for someone who's not going to necessarily be a good father.
Family man.
That's not what she's looking for. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Wow. And she doesn't, none of this is conscious. She doesn't realize it. And
it's like pheromones and stuff. And right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. And we have this other phenomenon now of all these women, and no doubt men as well, who are sort of in their 30s, late 30s, 40s, and they're still single. And then they suddenly realize, hang on, I think I want a family. I think I want to be that role now. And they're, they're kind of at that point where it's a bit late, maybe,
Yeah.
And apart from maybe being physically late, a lot of the time the lifestyle they've lived up to then sort of makes them not looked at as the motherly type, should we say,
Right. Yeah. And that's, that's another aspect of it is men's weakness is they want to look, right? And women's weakness is they want to be looked at. And so, that just sets up a vicious cycle of negativity. It's just spiraling them down, feeding the lower chakras and the insecurities, and it's like we're in a frequency war, really.
Oh, we are.
The higher vibrations against the lower vibrations. And
well, this is what all the advertising is. It's to push us down into those lower frequencies, the physical frequencies, the sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. Focused on the material and the passions, and just feeding all of that and keeping us distracted with all that. And and what do people do when they're depressed about a relationship? They go buy stuff and eat stuff and just keep that cycle going.
But this is the thing, like, just with that, what you just said then, how many movies are there with women and they have a breakup and get depressed, and what do? They sit down and they're eating stuff.
Right.
I mean, that's a program, isn't it? It's a program.
Right. It is. It really is.
It's, I mean, when was the last time you saw a movie where, a lady, went through a hard time and so went and had a good talk with her friends and they sorted it out?
Right.
You don't see that on
Right.
movies because I
Go
don't
on a
want you to do
shopping
that.
spree or yeah.
No, they want you to think the world's against you. Oh, something bad happened. That means the whole world's against you. So, no, it's all
Right.
over.
Right. Feeding the fear and the distrust. And, that's the thing is neither men or women are comfortable enough or trust the other enough that they will actually do their traditional role. They're like, I think I need to have my own money just in case, or I need to, they hold back. And so then it never works. You got to go all in or
Mm.
it won't happen,
And I suppose it's what are you doing it for? This whole concept of the family has pretty much been undermined, and they're really trying to push that that's not that's not the way to go. And I
Right.
always look at these shows again when I was growing up. Back in if you want to go to the 70s, they were all very family, all sitcoms and this kind of thing. They were all set in a family environment in the house, mum, dad,
Mhm.
kids. Even into the 80s, we had Growing Pains and all that kind of stuff,
Right, right.
but sort of very traditional based. And then it started moving forward, and we got Seinfeld. Suddenly, there's no
Yeah.
families, no kids,
Show about
Friends.
nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then suddenly Friends, and it's all these, 20 something, not interested in families, no kids,
Right.
and
They're
it, and
just
and then they're the cool people, right? So that's what everyone
mhm.
aspires to be. So this is how they really program us, but lead us down the path that they want us to go down, and now everyone's just confused, basically.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, at my house when my kids were little, I was the mean mom, because I didn't let them watch TV and you know, the only thing that we did watch, we'd watch movies and things occasionally, but I bought the whole like giant box set of Little House on the Prairie because that is the one show that I can think of that uh where they did it right. The dad was a man and the woman was a woman and they did their things and it worked together and they had problems but they worked through them.
Mm,
And when they had disagreements, there was he was the obvious decision maker. That doesn't mean that he's the tyrant. But they would consult each other. But the buck got to stop somewhere. If you try to be, if you try to split that or share that, it sounds like an equitable thing. But then you just end up with a two-handed monster.
mm.
And it doesn't. You know,
But the thing is, it's not. That's just the masculine role. Because dad wouldn't then walk in and tell mum how to look after the kids, and that you're doing that wrong, because that's her. We have separate
that's her
roles.
domain,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So it's not a. It's like you say. It's not a. Oh, he's the ruler. He's the dominant thing. Rah, rah. It's just we have to have our roles. We can't all do everything. It's got to be a family
Exactly.
unit that works as a working unit, not these groups of individuals, like you say, who are sort of sitting there like, well, I've got my little safe bank account. If it all goes wrong, I can just get divorced and run
Right.
away, because that's the other
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
People now think divorce is an option.
Right.
Instead of working through it for however long, they're like, oh, bugger it,
Right. You
divorce.
can't go into it with that mindset or you're dooming yourself from the get-go.
Mm,
We've become serial polygamists, really. I mean,
yeah.
monogamy is gone because that option is always in the back of everybody's mind. If they even bother with that. It's like, oh, I don't need a piece of paper.
Mm.
And so
It's yeah, and I mean this. I think what we're finding out is work, jobs, all this stuff has got so much to do with it too, because that's what they're doing is ripping the parents away so that they can then educate the kids the way they want to, and they're trying to get it younger and younger. They
mhm.
want they're now attaching preschool to schools and stuff, and literally some people have a baby and by 3 months it's at daycare, and
Oh, I know. I can't
it's
believe it. I
why did you have a
it just makes
baby?
me so sad. Yeah, that was the best decision we ever made, was for me to stop working and stay home, which I did when I had our number 2 son, and stayed home the rest of the time. And it was awesome. I loved it. I was so happy doing that. I could just, barefoot and pregnant is the way to go. They use that as a club to beat women with now, but it's natural. I mean, everybody should be barefoot, and and pregnancy it's just the most amazing, wonderful, beautiful thing to experience,
Mm.
and that they've made that into nothing,
Cheap.
basically.
They've
They're like,
they've
oh well,
cheapened.
just want to be a mom. I mean,
Yeah, that's not empowering. You're not a strong woman. What, just a mother? What, you're just going to create other humans and raise them? I mean,
right, exactly. Well,
you
especially
know,
if you on top of it, like I did for a lot of years.
it's
You
it's
wear a lot of hats and you're busy, but it's wonderful.
well, this is the
And
thing. It's fulfilling. We have all these people running around yelling, "Oh, don't do that, don't do that," and they like to yell, "Oh, you're programmed, you're programmed." Oh, yeah, yeah, you're a mother. Oh, like it's not natural or something. But these people are so unhappy. Clearly, they're unhappy. If they were happy, they wouldn't be running around pointing their fingers and yelling at people. So
yeah,
it's this whole. I mean, I guess it's ego when you get down to that, isn't it? Like people, I don't know. Herd mentality, is it? People just want to be like everyone else. They want to be like the people on the telly, and then that
right,
becomes their base. And if you're not that like that, well, you're the enemy. Ugh.
right. Yeah. Parrot the little sound bites that they hear, and I don't think they really think about it, you know? And, um,
Because the
I
way,
was fortunate to live. Oh, go
sorry, you
ahead.
go.
I was just going to say I was fortunate to live in places where there were quite a few other stay-at-home moms too, and so I didn't feel like I was, the
Yeah.
lone renegade with,
I mean,
nobody else is doing this, and so my kids felt like it was a normal thing, and they
mm,
loved it,
and that's a massive
and
part too, is community. Like when I was little, that was the thing. And it tended to be that, the families in certain areas would have kids the same age. I don't know how that worked, but it just tended to. And yeah,
yeah,
the mum would be home and all the kids would be out playing in the street with each other. And you
right,
just don't see
yeah,
that anymore. You don't see this interaction. And I guess if kids aren't interacting as much when they're young, they're not learning who they are and what masculine and feminine energies are. They're not.
right, and how to work that out, and like I remember when I was in elementary school, the boys and the girls would split at recess, and the girls would be playing jump rope and the guys would be playing smear the queer, guessing after the flag, and 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 the girls would be happy to sit and cheer them on if they didn't have anything to do, but this was kind of before girls sports, and that's a whole another thing, and that I'm probably going to be a little controversial in my opinions. But I just never felt like, I don't know, women's sports, of course women should be able to exercise and play sports if they want to and all that, but there's something about it that unbecoming, I guess is the word, or just competition is a very male thing, and it seems contrary to just the feminine essence, like even women athletes, if they're training hard, their monthly cycles will,
Yeah, changes all their
and
hormone cycles and everything. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
I mean, you
so
can you can see it too. I mean, like you said, you can, it's being one thing being fit and healthy, but then when you sort of get into professionals and depending on the sport as well, some of
mhm,
these women, once they get into it, they just don't look that feminine anymore. They, because and it's a hormone thing. They start getting
it is.
Oh man, and then we can put that down to so many other agendas that are going on. But
yeah,
this is
well, and then what they wear, I mean, aside from soccer and basketball, they still wear clothes, but most of the other sports, they pretty much don't, and so that's a confusing message.
It's just
It's like
such a
I'm masculine, but
dichotomy,
I'm
isn't it?
feminine.
They love to say, oh, you have to be empowered and, women have to be allowed in sports and do all this stuff and rah, 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 rah. And I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, and then they wear clothes that cause a reaction.
The clothes, yeah.
People looking, and they get angry if they're looked at.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. You've got to be empowered, but you've got to do it in a bikini,
Right. And how can you do, I don't know.
I know it's such, and this is part of it is it's meant to be confusing. People aren't supposed to be able to make sense of it because it's nonsense.
They do to us all the time is that's why in the news they'll say one thing is a fact and the next day it'll be completely opposite, to keep us all confused. And what that ends up doing is just making everybody give up and go, oh, whatever, just tell me where I need to go, and so people stop thinking because it's too stressful to try to figure it out.
It is, and I think people shouldn't stop thinking. They should stop.
Well, no.
They should just but just change your perspective and understand that is all. This is the thing. If we can understand that it's all just programming and people don't listen to the media and all that kind of stuff and start listening to themselves and talking to other people, it's not a big problem because all we're doing is really going back to who we are. We're just letting the other stuff go. We're not changing. We're just, because when it gets down to it, we know who we are. We all do. We've just been fed this lie that, no, that's not who you are. No, you're over here. You're not really there. So we've just got to, get back to, ourselves and stop listening to these people who control the narrative.
Well, with now with technology, that's almost impossible because it's in everybody's hand all day long.
Yeah, especially younger people just walking around like this, and you even see there's clips of people falling in ponds and stuff and water, in fountains because they're looking at their phone. And
right, it's crazy. I mean, you and I think are old enough where we can step away, but the younger ones, they got them young, and it's an addiction, and it rewires their brain to not be able to set it down.
It does. Well, it's based on endorphins, and especially all this social media, likes and everything. That's a whole, that's engineered. The whole fact that this is all based on likes and how many people saw me, how many people like me, and so you get these, you've probably seen these poor people putting up these videos, and they're just these confused poor people, but they're only doing it for the likes. You can tell that they don't like who they are, but every time they get this little endorphin hit or something. It's like, yes,
a little bit of dopamine. Yep. And if they're not getting the likes, then they get depressed, and they keep checking and checking. Did anybody like it? And
so I guess again, it's the external. It's going outside and believing that outside controls you is really the problem. They're giving us the narrative, but we already know what the story is. This is the problem. Do you listen to Owen Benjamin at all?
I don't.
You don't? No, okay. He's interesting. He's been kicked off everything. I think he might be back on YouTube.
I probably like him.
Yeah, he's good. But he talks a lot about family values and all this kind of stuff. He was actually in Hollywood. He's a comedian, and he was in Hollywood, and he was in sitcoms and stuff, and he kind of saw what was going on and jumped ship. And he's got a really big following, and he just talks about just getting back to the land, building community, having families, all this stuff. And he's got a massive following. His live streams, he'll get 20, 30,000 people sometimes, and it just shows, and it's mostly male, his audience, but it shows you that this is It's what people want. It's what people feel is right. You know,
Yeah.
when they see the truth, when we see the truth, we know what the truth is.
Hmm.
You know, we've just got to find it and
Right, right.
cut through the crap.
Yeah. Well, there's another really good book that I both of my oldest two sons have both read it, and I hadn't at the time, and they'd come in and ask me, Mom, is this true? Because it talks about, it's called The Way of the Superior Man
Ooh.
by David Deida. And my son just moved to California and he took his copy, so I ordered one for myself, and I haven't gotten all the way through it, but yeah, it's really good. For guys to read especially, but even women too, because that gives you, it's mostly about how to be a man and how to deal with women. How do women think? What is going on in those crazy heads of theirs, type thing. And he's really honest about it. And he's right. My sons would come to check with me and I was like, is he getting this right, Mom? And I'd say, yeah, that sounds right to me. He's got us figured out. So that's definitely something I would recommend.
Definitely.
And he hits the spiritual aspect of it too, which is important. And self-control is huge for him in there, and how to do that, and what to do with all your energy, and the transmutation. He gets into that, and
Nice.
really, really good book.
I think I'll have to grab a copy of that one. Yeah. I mean, and this is the information that we need that's been lost. It used to be passed down, father to son and mother to daughter. And that's exactly why, the state, whatever you want to call these parasites, they interject it at the youngest age they can, because they want to cut that connection and go, no, we'll give you the story now.
Right.
Up until it's like the book 1984, which is where we are right now. Where they're talking about, the kids and the parents teach their kids to be snitches. And in the end, the kids snitch on the parents and it's in the parents to jail. So it's, it's this whole big, thing. I mean, people have got to be seeing it. But, I mean, the good thing is that, we are in the Great Awakening. I think people are starting to wake up to the facade, but we still really need to get back to, I think, just shouting more, making more noise that, it's okay to be a man. It's okay to be a woman. It's like, all these, and they say traditional roles, and people don't really sort of, they go, oh, tradition, what does that mean? Oh, most people probably think it's bad now, but what it really means is that's the way it was always done. Now, if that's the way it was always done, something must have been working, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and another one of the organizations that now is a bad one, that at least the way we talk about them, that really did have some good to them, originally, or at least in theory. Whether in practice that ever happened or not, who knows. But the you were just talking about them, the Knights of Malta.
Yeah.
And I looked up the code of the Knights of Malta just because I knew it was in there somewhere. And I can read you their list of, qualities of the Christian knight, or obligations of the Christian knight is what they called it.
Yeah,
and
sure.
To live one's life in truth, be merciful, repentance for sins, in other words, admit when you're wrong, show humility, love justice, have faith, know how to be sincere and unreserved, and be able to endure persecution. Stand firm, basically.
Jeez.
So, all the virtues that we're wishing were here now. People knew in
they
unexpected places like that. It wasn't always this nefarious, slimy, thing going on.
Well, this is the thing. Everything that we have, like we've built everything, like all this stuff, all the ideas, everything comes from the humans, like not the parasites who are trying to rule us.
Right, because they can't create anything.
They can't create. They can only take what we've got and change it and twist it and invert it and things like this.
Yeah.
And that's why they need us, because they need our creative energy. And so that's why if they control what we think, we create what they want.
We
And
manifest what they want us to, right?
exactly. And that's the big game. And so obviously we know what they want at the moment. Look around, and so
Right.
this whole destruction of the family, destruction of, roles of, traditional roles of parents and all this kind of thing. It's all part of the agenda. It's because it's like the way to win a war, like the best way to win a war is just to get your enemy to kill itself, right?
Right.
And that's what's going on. And it's just mind control. So yeah, I mean, what's the solution? I guess is it just more information getting out there? I mean,
That's part of it. And then, being willing to take the risk to trust, that other people are going to do the same thing and feel
yeah,
the same way, because we're so fearful, because we've been conditioned to be, you know,
mm,
and because it's just the constant division. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's the dualistic reality, right?
mm,
And if spiritually that creates the negative energy that the parasites feed off of,
fair
well,
enough.
you
Mm,
know, they're going to try to
exactly.
perpetuate that every way they can, right?
Mm. Oh yeah, I think trust is huge. Like it's like that word intimacy. There doesn't seem to be much of it anymore, and that's intimacy is like into me you see. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
that connection of actual what do you call it, self or spirit connection or whatever, that people aren't
Mm-hmm.
even going there because of
No,
the fear of rejection that's been
right.
put in their heads. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to open themselves up and like take a chance, which is, this
Right.
is what, you know, all the old, the old sort of movies and stories, that's what, romance used to be. It was taking a chance, seeing what would
Yes.
happen,
Right. Having
like
that
enjoying the
vulnerability to
process.
put yourself out there. Right.
Mm. And
And
seeing, and then if, if it didn't work out, not going and crying in a corner for the rest of your life,
right.
getting
Right.
over it, learning something from it and moving forward.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, people. I think people just expect too much to come out exactly the way they want it. If you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean. It's kind of like everyone basically subconsciously knows that they manifest, even if they won't admit it. And they put out all these thoughts and they manifest these, things, and they don't like them, and they get annoyed, and I lost my train of thought again.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
I've got so many things in my head. Um, where was I going?
That's all right.
Can't even remember now. I can't even remember where I started. Gosh.
Well, I have another interesting book to tell you about if you want.
Yes, tell me about that, and I'll think.
Maybe it'll trigger something for you.
Yeah.
I came across a book written in 1934 by this Oxford social anthropologist. It's like a 600-page, and he said even that was a summary, but it's called Sex and Culture. And what he did was analyze 86 previous societies. So this is obviously prior to the 1930s when he wrote it. Have you heard about it?
No, no, no.
Okay. Um, and he looked for a relationship between um, morality and the flourishing of culture. And what he found was there was absolutely a direct relationship between the level of restraint placed on sexuality mostly, and the level of creativity or productivity in all areas of culture. He looked at art, architecture, science, engineering, literature, agriculture, and in societies where prenuptial chastity was absolute and monogamy was absolute, no divorcing and remarrying or anything, one wife, and if that didn't work out, then that's the
Bad
end,
luck. Yep.
Anyway, that was the best or the highest flourishing culture. They were absolutely, leaps and bounds ahead of any of the others. And he found that once they started to relax that, within 3 generations, they didn't care about anything. They were just like, they were totally self-serving, had no interest in relationships, no interest in nature. It was all about me, feed my need. And, here we are. But it was really interesting that every time he found the same correlation.
It's bizarre, isn't it? It takes sort of so long to learn stuff and build societies up, and then 3 generations that can just crash it.
Right. Well, and people think, oh, well, moral rules are, oppressive, and God doesn't want anybody to be happy, or the church doesn't want anybody to be happy. But really, those rules are made for the opposite reason. They're to help humans flourish and be who they were created to be. So it's
well, and the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? It's like if that's the data we've got, that these societies did much better. Well, hello.
Right.
Like, what are you going to say to that? This is a
right.
thing.
And he was not a religious man. He was totally secular, did not go into this with, an agenda or anything at all.
This is a whole nother sort of topic, is the whole, sexual energy thing. And obviously, the whole porn thing. Can I say that, YouTube?
Everything. That's bumper stickers everywhere.
Yeah. And apart from, the sort of moral, ethical thing, it's an energy thing, isn't it? It's draining energy. And like you said, this is why societies that practice monogamy and celibacy and things are so much more creative, because they've got that energy still. Like it's going into different things. Because when you think about it, of course it's creative energy, because it's supposed to create life, right?
It's powerful stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And that was the traditional definition of fornication. People have tried to, make it mean, just this, but no, it meant any, to use a euphemism, spilling of the cup of Hermes, or however you want to put that, outside an intentional marital encounter, anything else. And they recognize, and that was why, the term self-abuse was a thing, and now that just sounds funny to kids. They're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But when you realize the energetic consequences of that, then it makes total sense.
And the fact that we don't really have any role models that are living like this, that we can point to and go, wow, look what they do. What are they doing? I want to live like, be more like that. I'm sure they're out there, but they definitely aren't promoted. That's for sure.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I've heard there's, like Tesla, I think he chose to remain single, and, people like that. There are a few where, every once in a while someone will mention, but yeah, boys aren't taught that you're literally draining yourself of your masculinity. They just want you to get a habit by the time you're 12, and, then you're ruined.
Then you can depower yourself forever. Yeah, right.
Yes, right. It's it rewires their brains, and it's harder to quit than crack, say the neurologists. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, it completely rewires your brain, and and there's movements out there. There's this is another website that my son's told me about. I think it's called the Universal Man, and he's all about how to get control of that and get your energy back. And, it's basically a support group for guys who are like, I might want to try that. And it's got to be like a support group, like a 12-step thing, because it's so hard.
Well, that's another thing Benjamin goes into, and he's very big on that. And he's now sort of created a culture, among men, where that's now the cool thing and the manly thing to do. So he's there are people out there getting, and Santos Bonacci's been talking about it a lot lately. So yeah, I think this is a thing. I mean, it is, the apocalypse, right? The lifting of the veil. We're starting to see all this stuff for what it is. We've just got to, I guess, start putting the action in and start actually doing it, becoming,
Mhm.
you know, the people that we, you know, that we want to be, like becoming the example for others and showing that it can be done. You know, there's a different way, a better way. It's
And
like
then
the
I think it's
Amish and that, you know, everyone loves to laugh at the
right,
Amish, but they're doing quite well. You know, they don't seem to
right.
care.
Yeah,
So it's all
yeah.
these. I think we're starting to realize that what we lost was probably the best part of us. You know, all this, you know,
Mhm.
people, you know, the traditional family and that which they try and tell us is so bad and so, you know, bloody racist or whatever they want to call it. But
Yeah.
that's the truth. That's where people were happy. That's where things worked. Everyone, you
Mhm.
know, knew their place, and people are happy when they know their place. No one wants to walk
Right.
around not knowing where they belong. That's a
No,
problem.
then you're lost and confused, and you know, yep,
Which is
that's
another
true.
thing. No one wants to be told their position or admit or believe they have a position or a place, but then they all run around complaining, you know, that they feel left
Right.
out
Well,
and, you know,
yeah, because they equate it with slavery. That's the
yeah.
same thing, that comes into the male-female relationships, is they think, yeah, well, I'm not going to let my husband, be the head of the family because then I'll just be a slave. Well, no, not if it's done right. And the same for men. They're not, like what even my 16-year-old says, men want to do the hard things. They're willing to go out there and do the work and, whatever they do all day. They just don't want, they'd like to be appreciated for it, or not just like, well, that's what you're supposed to do, now come home and help me do all my stuff. And
This is,
you
yeah,
know
exactly.
let's create a nice soft place for them to come home to, and be
Mm.
able to forget that, and relax and be comfortable and feel loved and appreciated and taken
And,
care of
and
you
then it
know
works. I mean, if you think of a farming situation, you know, women just aren't built to go out and work for 10, 12
Wow.
hours, plow the
Right.
fields and chop the wood. They're not. And they would
No.
not appreciate being asked to. But like you say, men are happy to, you know, and they're happy to if they can, like you say, go home and there's a nice meal and it's warm and they can
Right.
then relax. You know, they've done their bit. And the same with, you know, the woman. It's not about her just sitting there thinking about the man cook. You know, she's doing her work during the day. He's doing his, you know, and then at night
Right.
time you both get to relax. If you both sort of play your role, I guess it all works out.
Exactly. It
You know,
works if both sides are doing their thing.
yeah,
But yeah, man is the head and woman is the heart. And
yeah,
you need
exactly.
both just as much.
Definitely do. Yeah, we've got to understand we're not the same. We're different, but we're both,
Right.
you know,
And that's a good
we're both powerful in who we are and who we're meant to be. It's when we start trying to not be who we are, that
right.
all falls apart.
Right. Well, there's a lady called I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Alice von Hildebrand. She was
No.
her husband was a famous philosopher and professor, and then she was as well. Dietrich von Hildebrand was his name, and that was in the mid 1900s, I think, late mid to late. She died recently, so but she was very focused on countering this, sort of angry feminism that was cropping up, and she wrote a book called On the Privilege of Being a Woman, and trying to remind women of who they are and embrace that. And she said, it's funny, the feminists unwittingly, you know sort of admit or acknowledge the superiority of men because they're trying so hard to be them. you know She's like,
It's a
and
good point.
right, and why would you do that? Her point was, why would you do that when you you're giving up your own power and honor and dignity, and I
It's
mean, women are portals. A
yeah,
man will never be able to say that. The
no,
divine comes into a woman,
yeah, yeah.
and
That's the thing. You
it's
guys can go a
amazing.
lot that we can't. But isn't
you
it
know
funny that it's called feminism, and they literally are going as far away from being female as they can?
right, Right, which is so silly,
It's just
and of course, all of those movements were agitated and thought up by the usual suspects.
yes, yeah, and we fell for it. I mean, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do make good plans, but it's because they do them over generations that we don't see them. That's the
Right,
problem. You
right.
know,
They're in it for the long con, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the slow drip method, and yeah, it gets by a lot of us. So there we go. All righty, wow. Well, that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'd like to get like a round table together too, where we
Okay.
can talk more on this kind of topic because I think it's a big one at the moment. And
It is. And they're looking for resources, I think. And,
mm,
and just how is this supposed to work and what do we do? And,
well, this is
you
the
know,
thing. Everyone, yeah, knows something needs to change, but how do you do it? This is the
right,
yeah.
right.
And you seem to have
Yeah.
some good books there too. So yeah, we'll get some resources out, let people know some good authors and stuff to read as well, and get because it's all about information, isn't it? Getting it out there
Right.
and
Because people need to, take it in and just sort of let it simmer in their own brain and, see how they feel
get
about it
going.
and, if it'll work for them or how they want to approach it.
Definitely
So,
awesome. All right, well, nice to meet you. Nice to see your happy, smiling face. 9 children, hey? Wow, that's, and you're still big smile. There you go. So it just shows that it's it's a good life, right? Yeah, it's a way to go. Awesome.
well,
All
thanks,
right, yeah.
Cambell. Thank y'all.
All right, thanks for your time. Have an awesome night. Dream well, and I'll talk to you
Yep.
soon.
Okay. Bye, Cambell.
See ya.